Hi, my name is Michael, and I plan to write a tool which helps users to create a concept for a presentation before actually doing the real presentation in one of the standard presentation tools like PowerPoint or Keynote, etc. And today I invited Cliff Atkinson, the author of the best-selling book Beyond Bullet Points, to talk a little bit about this idea.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me. This is exciting to be here, and I've just already started playing on our little sketch tool that we have here together, so I don't mind my sketches on here. But I'm excited to hear about your tool. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the background is for this and why you're doing it?
So I'm creating presentations, technical presentations mostly as a software developer to talk to other developers. And what I always find is it's really hard to get a new presentation started when I use PowerPoint, for example, because it kind of drives you to create or start with the first slide and work your way through. And I think it's much better to start in a more in a more chaotic way, like and look at the whole picture first, and from this chaos kind of get the story or the outline ready. So what I started to use was a whiteboard and sticky notes, where I was just collecting ideas and then assembling them until I had some nice story for my presentations, and then sketched them on paper. And once all of that was ready, I actually started to use PowerPoint, for example.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened differently? So what happened as a result of taking this approach?
It gave me much more freedom, and I was able to focus on what's really important. So, for example, in the very beginning, I don't really know the title of the story or how I want to do the introduction and things like that, but I certainly have certain ideas. I know maybe that I want to use a certain diagram, there's a certain story I want to include, and I have all of these ideas which are just floating, kind of, and it's really hard to capture that in current tools, and that's why I started to switch to whiteboard, because there I can just put my ideas anywhere and then start to arrange them just after a while, and it helps me to really get into the flow and work on what is important for me at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a really important thing I think that you're bringing up, and I think intuitively, you're seeing a problem that I have also seen with PowerPoint particularly, is that it's a tool that, well, at a number of levels, one way that we use the tool is actually the tool we use for our critical thinking. So we'll often open up the PowerPoint and then you just start typing almost like it's a Word document, and then you really quickly, because you're working one frame at a time, what I found, in that sort of perspective, is that you're only seeing one chunk of information at a time, and so it's really easy to lose the context for the complete presentation. And I think that's what I'm hearing you saying right now, is that as you can just start with the big picture, literally on that blank whiteboard, and start to put ideas, then you're really capturing the big idea first. And I think that's just a tool, a perspective that's lacking when you start working in slides, because you easily get into the details and don't have a way to really stay in tune with the big picture.
Right, yeah.
And that's one of the key things, I think, that for me, in developing the Beyond Bullet Points approach that you'd mentioned, is that I realized, let's say that we're working on a slide here, and then normally we just start typing the information down, and this is what I meant by the we're really at a granular level already, and And really another part to this is that often there's just a lot of text, a lot of detailed information. So we have that saying that you can't see the forest for the trees. So really we're looking at, right away from slide 1, we're looking at the trees. And so one of the things that I realized with that, actually an interesting story. Like the very first thing I did in PowerPoint was to create a music video, and because I was working in San Francisco back in the first .com boom, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and wanted to tell the story of my experience, and I wanted to create a video, but didn't know any video editing software. So what I did know was PowerPoint, and what I did was to look at PowerPoint from this perspective, so in the slide sorter view. And from this perspective, I was able to see that what I'm actually looking at here is a storyboard, and that I could actually tell a story from one frame to the next. So really this was a shift for me in the context of looking at the tool itself, because before, as I mentioned, we tend to look at it just as a Word document, and this is where we collect all this information. So then I started to see that this has the potential to be a storytelling tool. So that may be one thing that we have in common, is just like this desire to be able to look at the complete picture. And one way that I found to do that, of looking at the complete picture, was to look at slide sorter view. And that's one thing that I always tell people too, is that normally when you look at a presentation, you're looking at all these slides and there's all that micro detail. And one thing I always recommend is that you be able to look at slide sorter view and literally see your most important 3 points. So where is 1, where's 2, and where's 3? So that's something that's really important, and I think that's one thing that you can do in your whiteboarding technique, is to quickly see. Let's say you've got the whiteboard set up, and you started out with the pie chart, and you've got the lots of information. You can quickly and easily say, okay, that's a very really important thing, and this is an important thing, and this is an important thing, and it just gives a lot more creative flexibility to work. And one thing, let me throw in too before I finish this riff, is the other thing that this does is we're really looking at. I'm going to draw. So that's the side of a little brain. And of course, if we were to look at it, I'm probably not very good at looking at it drawn from the front. But what I'm trying to say here is really point out this whole left brain and right brain functioning of the brain itself. So the left, of course, this is just a metaphor we really use, because brain scientists don't, there's not a clear distinction like left and right, just like, left and right feet, but that it's a helpful metaphor to say that in this general grouping, this area of the brain that tends to be more of our linear functioning, and then over on the right is our more synthetic, the synthesis, the story, the emotional part over on the right. And so one of the things I'm noticing that you're talking about doing, and what normally happens in PowerPoint, we open up a slide and start typing. The typing itself, and the placement of the detailed information is normally a left brain function. And what you're doing looks to me, by looking at that big picture and looking at things spatially and looking at relationships and looking at what's most important, you're now engaging the right brain functionality as well. So it's not that, using one or the other, but by looking at the big picture like you're talking about doing, we're applying not just a left brain, because there's a lot of, especially with your work, it sounds like a lot of technical information, but you're also now looking at the big picture of the whole thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Didn't occur to me so far. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So the Post-it note idea too, and that's something that I often work with people in workshops. I'm encouraging them. Well, let me back up too and just say that the foundation, one of the foundational things, as I'm going back to the earlier story I was relating, I was looking at PowerPoint in slide sorter view, seeing everything at once. One of the things I saw then is that I could see the complete story, and I couldn't see that when I was only on one individual slide. And so that created a big disconnect then, like how can you work on this individual slide and then also work on all the little slides at the same time. So that for me at the very beginning of developing the Beyond Bullets approach was like how to resolve this conflict, because you really need to do both, right? We need to relate one piece of information, and then that piece of information fits into the bigger context of a presentation. So the only thing that I could come up with, Michael, you weren't around at the time to help me, but 10 years ago, the thing that I came up with was to actually tell people that before you start working in PowerPoint at all, that you need to figure out what the story is going to be. You need to look at the big picture. And so for me, what I had done at that time was to develop, it was a Word document. So I was saying, before you get into PowerPoint, let's go and work in this Word document first. Mm-hmm. And in the Word document, it was basically just an outline saying that we need to figure out what the story is going to be, and basically that your audience is facing a situation at point A and they want to get to point B, and your presentation is basically going to tell them how they're going to get from A to B. And then the second part of that was an introduction, and the second part was then to help people to now break up that information into some sort of hierarchy of importance, to say that in any presentation, now that we've got the story set up here in this first part, then what are your three most important points that you want to make? What are the three things you want your audience to remember when they leave the presentation? And so by working this way, in part one, we can call this, part A in the introduction, or you can call this act one. It's about making the emotional connection, saying this is why we're doing this is why it's important, this is where we're going. And then the second part, the big part of the story here, was about defining what's most important. What is it that you're going to cover? And one of the things that happens, so individuals work on this Word document, but then also teams, you can just put this up on a projector, and the team together is deciding, well, what's those most important three things? Most people have different ideas about what that is. And then the collaborative process together helps them to be able to define what the story is, and for all of them to give sign off and to decide what's going to go in and what's going to go out. And so there's one aspect of that, of having multiple people work on this together, especially as this might be blown up on a big projector on the screen. Now you've got a collaborative process where people can work on this sort of stuff together. So it sounds like, Michael, like when you're working on that whiteboard too, that you might be working on it, but you also might have some of your colleagues come over, and you can grab them and say, hey, what do you think? Or, how's this looking to you? Just curious if you've had any, or if I don't know that your work situation, if you might work for yourself or if you work with others, but I'm curious if there's been any collaborative sort of byproducts of this.
Oh, yeah, that's, I think that's really critical to get early feedback, because when you work on a presentation, you often, or you easily get caught up in details, and you're kind of missing the point, or where you just forget important information that's critical for somebody who sees the stuff the first time, but you're totally aware of. So for me, it was always very important to talk to my colleagues and get their feedback and find out what they actually think, and if they understood everything, and which part needed improvements. And yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that happens with the collaboration, is that you're really bringing the best of your thinking and the best of other people's thinking. And so, and that's one thing is, to reiterate and reinforce what you're saying, is that when I am working on any piece of, any project or any body of information, that I can get stuck in this tunnel vision where I just have my mindset and my understanding of it. And when we're going to this next stage and saying, well, I need to present what's most important to somebody else, that it's important in the development itself, the presentation process, to bring in these other people. And in that collaboration, like you're saying, maybe I missed something, maybe I'm off the mark, maybe they have more knowledge about the audience than I do, maybe they can notice some way that I'm thinking that I'm not aware of. And in that meeting of the brains and the minds, you're really coming up with something that's greater than the sum of the individual parts. So,
yeah, I agree.
so I'm
I
curious about the tool that you're creating then. So is this so it's inspired by this whiteboarding idea, and then what is it that you're going to help people with? What kind of tools or features is it going to have?
so first of all, yeah, it starts as a blank whiteboard, so you can collect your ideas. Um, Once you have that, I'll just clean that now and try to draw something myself.
Okay.
Um, so let's say you have this. Oops, I'm not so good in drawing, it seems.
I actually have a tablet PC with a pen or a
Oh,
stylus,
okay. So I
so
have to
so it
use.
makes it smooth and I do recommend that to everybody. It used to
Yeah,
be that, Microsoft has always promoted tablets, so I've always had a tablet for presentations because of something like this. I can write on the PowerPoint slides like we're doing now, and it creates an interesting dynamic during presentations. So with this, now you're creating, so this will be an interface, maybe kind of like the one we're using. And this one is called awwapp.com, by the way, right? So this is just a free sketching screen sharing service, right?
right.
Then
So
what?
yeah, it's I plan to develop it as a web application, so it will run on any desktop computer, but also on all tablets.
Uh-huh.
Um, and actually now, when we talk about the collaboration, I think I'll have to enable a collaboration mode as well, so you can actually share this and even work on the whiteboard together at the same time, just connecting to the server.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an important feature. I already put it down. So yeah, you would start just by collecting ideas randomly, the ideas you have in your head, and then you can actually select some templates. So let's say if we do something like the beyond bullet point approach, if you want to do that, you would get here some areas. Maybe here you have A and B, and then you can actually take these notes and move them to the area where you want to put them. Below here you would have areas. Oh, my drawing is really bad compared to yours. So here you would have the three main points, and you would you can click on those areas to get more information. It would explain you what this, for example, what this A is and what's important about it. And then you would just take your ideas and pull them on the area where you want, where it belongs. So that you take your ideas and then you can just use certain story templates or certain presentation templates and just move them there. And with that, you already have a very solid foundation for your presentation, I would say. I think it's very easy and yeah, intuitive to use actually that way, and the result is will be pretty amazing, I think, for most people. So once you have that, I'm not really sure about the switch between now this where you have this overview outline and then when you want to go into the details, but maybe you would just zoom into, let's say, for example, this sticky note. I'll just take another color here. Once you have your outline, you just, you have some sticky notes which belong to your point 1, point 3, to the B. Maybe you have down here, you have something for the conclusion, which is also important. So once you have that, you would be able to zoom into these slides and actually use the whiteboard in a more zoomed. You just zoom to have one of those sticky notes as a full screen. So I'll just delete it, and you can have, I mean, it depends on how you like it. You can have like just 2 or 3 because it's flexible. You can zoom as deep as you want, and then you would just start to draw. Like here, you want to have this pie chart. It's a round circle, as you might guess. Here, you maybe want to have some picture of some people. I should stop drawing. I think it just...
That's okay.
So you just sketch your ideas.
So this is the zoom view, right? So it's always going to stay on one.
This is the zoom view, and you can always, pen the whole whiteboard to the other sticky notes, or you can zoom out to get the overview and zoom back in, and work like this to get the whole, to switch easily between the big overview, but also then going into the slides to create sketches. I mean, one thing I want to mention here is the tools you will have available here will be very limited, because what I often found when I use tools is they're so powerful and so work so pixel perfect. I just waste too much time, getting the perfect gradient, making all rectangles the same size, make sure that the fonts or the text is aligned. And actually, I think it's too early at this stage. I just want to, sketch out some ideas how I want to have these slides graphically, and get the whole flow of the whole presentation, and see that. And once you have that, you would be able to export this into a PowerPoint presentation and load it into PowerPoint, and then you can finalize your slides and get a decent looking pie chart and the real photo of people, and work on the finalization. So that would be the third step.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. I think it's a big piece that's normally missing from presentations. I mentioned a little while ago this whole challenge, and I would challenge anybody who's listening to our recording here to go back to your PowerPoints, any PowerPoint that you have, and open it up. Look at all your slides. For many presentations, there'll be more than 6 slides. There'll probably be, 120 often in a lot of these presentations. But my challenge to you is to look at any presentation that you have, and then ask the question, or answer the question. Ask yourself the question, where are the 3 most important ideas here? And more often than not, we'll look at presentations like this, and it's just impossible to be able to look at all your slides and see what's most important because of the way that we're working. And I think what you're saying is that what's so important, or what's resonating with me with what you're saying, is that if you just have just the blank sheet of paper or the blank screen, and on here you can get the core story, and the most important information, the core structure. So really what we're looking at is elevating to the top level of attention and the top level of our, what we're doing and working on the presentation. We're making that really clear and easy to work with, and keeping our focus on what's most important. Because what's ever on the right, the story. So here it'll be clear to see what are the 3 most important ideas. What's the story here? And as that is lifted to the top level of attention and stays in focus, then that really makes sure that that's anchored in the story. And that more often than not is what's missing from PowerPoint presentations. This whole piece that you're talking about facilitating is just not there in the old way of doing presentations. It's unclear what the story is from the start, and it's unclear where the 3 most important ideas are. So being able to work first before PowerPoint, on that most important structure, and how you're going to distill this down in terms of the story, that piece, and being able to focus on that first will just save you so much work later on. It'll improve the efficiency of presenting. It'll help you focus and sharpen your thinking, and it'll have a much better result for your audience, because then they'll be clear on their side when you communicate to them what the story is and what's most important. So yeah, I really want to applaud you for for introducing this new tool, to presenters, and look forward to seeing, how people use it. And I want to add too that I think this whole idea of your that there's some sort of templates, giving people some core structures for presentations. Here's some core ways that people have organized information that just work for them, can really help people as well, because it can be intimidating to start something from complete scratch and have that blank sheet of paper and not really know where to go. So I find that for a lot of people, just being able to even flip through a couple of examples of how things can be effectively structured can be a big help, and help accelerate their own process of developing their presentations.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have an idea of when you're going to be able to launch the new product?
When I'm going to launch it? Well, right now I'm seeking crowdfunding on Indiegogo. So the development will be mostly done by myself, but certain things I'm really bad at, like drawing, for example, as we have seen, or designing in general, or writing the text, since I'm not a native speaker. For all of that, I'm seeking funding, and once that is secured, I can start development, and I hope to have first version ready by the end of this year.
Oh, great. And so if people were looking on Indiegogo and wanted to help out, then what would they search for?
That
just your name, or?
I don't know. So far, that's a good question. I have to look it up, I'm afraid.
Can you do a quick search just so that anybody who's watching can look it up? Just maybe search for presentations or.
So.
While you're looking that up too, if anybody is, Michael mentioned my book. It's called Beyond Bullet Points. So if you're not familiar with that, you can go to this website, and there's a little video introduction and a little bit more description of how the process works. But it's definitely complementary to what Michael is doing here.
So I just found it. Since I'm recording the screen, everybody can see the project page easily.
Oh, great. Okay.
So it's you can see it here. And let's switch back. Yeah, Beyond Bullet Points. That's your website, right?
Yes, that's great. So yeah, I highly encourage everybody. This sounds like a really fun and useful project. So if you want to contribute and help make presentations go better and smoother and easier, then go to Indiegogo and help out Michael.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Well, thanks for having me. It's been great talking to you, and I'm really excited to follow your project and to see how things unfold.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, good luck with the project. You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.